I don't know your name. I'm Rey.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and Star Wars is coming back to the big screen. Finally, we're getting a Jedi Origins film from Logan director James Mangold, a culmination film for The Mandalorian and its adjacent shows like Ahsoka, directed by the one and only Dave Filoni. And we're getting a brand new trilogy following Rey Nobody / Rey Palpatine / Rey Skywalker, following her journey of rebuilding the Jedi Order. And we think that a certain fan favorite character might be tagging along for the ride. A little later in the video, we're going to talk about an army of aliens from another galaxy that I think could be the villains of this new trilogy and bring together the Mandalorians and the Jedi to save the galaxy. But first, let's talk about Grogu. The Grogu character is without a doubt the most beloved creation of this new era of Star Wars. He's become a pop culture phenomenon known to most as Baby Yoda. Now, we think Grogu is the future of this franchise and will be around for a long time.
A long time. A long time.
With his species having a lifespan of nearly 1,000 years, we could see Grogu's adventure span over centuries of Star Wars stories. He was born in the year 41 BBY before the Battle of Yavin. That's the big battle that we see in A New Hope.
Fun fact for you.
Anakin Skywalker, also born in 41 BBY. Now, this new Rey trilogy is set in the year 50 ABY. That's 50 years after the Battle of Yavin. And that's 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker. That would make Grogu 91 years old during this new trilogy. To put that in perspective, Yoda was 100 years old when he became a Jedi Master, meaning that at age 91, Grogu will likely be the human years equivalent of a young adult.
Wait, so this Rey trilogy takes place 15 years after Rise of Skywalker?
Yes.
Oh, good. Get some distance between that train wreck.
True that. High five. And look, it's no secret that me and many other fans were not happy with The Rise of Skywalker. It was bad.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
But Daisy Ridley and the character of Rey was not the problem. I personally feel that she gave a rock-solid performance in each of her Star Wars films. Rey is a very interesting character. I mean, she was more interesting before they made her a Palpatine, but, you know, what can you do? So I'm really glad they're not abandoning this character despite the poor reception that the sequels, and specifically The Rise of Skywalker, received. But let me be clear, this character and the franchise itself does have baggage, and I think that's yet another reason that Grogu might be brought into this new trilogy. Not only does the timeline line up perfectly for him to be a fellow Force user working with Rey to rebuild the Jedi Order, but he is also a popular and beloved character that can help redeem the saga and its theatrical films. And I think that in all likelihood, this trilogy will actually be episodes 10, 11, and 12 of the Star Wars saga. The thought of a Rey and Grogu duo just gets me giddy, man, like two powerful Force wielders, both temporarily trained by Luke Skywalker, and both trying to find their place in the galaxy. It would be awesome. And if we get to see Grogu riding on Rey's back, I might cry.
Cry. Slap the process.
Now, we need to keep in mind that while Grogu is indeed a strong Force user, he is not a Jedi and is not on the path to becoming a Jedi. He is a Mandalorian.
Then I will adopt him as my own.
And that's where the plot twist comes. As much as I'd love to see Rey and Grogu be a dynamic duo, it's possible that at first they could be adversaries. As Rey travels the galaxy looking for Force sensitives, she could encounter one of the galaxy's strongest Force users, Din Grogu. Now, we still have lots to learn about the future of Mandalore after the events of the Season 3 finale of The Mandalorian. My theory is that come Season 4, we'll have an episode where Din and Grogu return to Mandalore and we'll see that a lot of progress has been made, with the planet nearly restored, similar to how Navarro rapidly changed between seasons of the series. And Mandalore will almost certainly play a major role in the upcoming Dave Filoni film that will likely feature Grand Admiral Thrawn as the main antagonist. We'll probably see Thrawn defeated and the Imperial remnants will be yet again stifled by our heroes. But we know that eventually the First Order will rise, and in the sequel trilogy we hear no mention of Mandalore or its people.
Well, that was rude.
Except for this Mythosaur flag at Maz Kanata's Cantina. Now, you would think that Mandalorians, especially Mandalorians being led by Bo-Katan, you would think that they would play a key role in keeping the Empire, or any version of the Empire, from returning. It was the Empire who destroyed their homeworld and who still wants to eradicate Mandalorians from the galaxy.
We shall be rid of the Mandalorians once and for all.
So I think it's likely that something catastrophic happens in the next 23 years that transpires between Season 3 of The Mandalorian and The Force Awakens. We think that something must go down with the Mandalorians in these 23 years that will result in them becoming isolationists.
I say what now?
Isolationists, meaning that they keep to themselves and don't get involved with any conflicts that don't directly affect them.
But the Empire returning and taking over the galaxy, like that would affect the Mandalorians.
Yes, you would think, but remember, it was primarily Moff Gideon who had an obsession with the Mandalorians. Mandalorians. It's possible that with him out of the picture, we could see the Empire change course and attempt to befriend them.
Let's be friends. Best friends.
Now it's clear that the current Mandalorians that are taking back Mandalore have no interest in being involved with any Imperial remnants, but they're also not interested in being involved with the poorly run New Republic.
Let's go back to the core and report them to the New Republic.
That's a joke.
But imagine if a persuasive figure like Grand Admiral Thrawn comes into play. He is a brilliant tactician and may view the Mandalorians as a potential ally in his efforts to reclaim the galaxy. He has a deep appreciation for culture, so I could easily see him smooth talk a significant number of Mandalorians into joining the Empire's efforts.
Mandalorians would never join the Empire.
True, but what if it's not called the Empire? What if it's called
The First Order!
Now, the Rebels TV series made Thrawn out to be more of your stereotypical bad guy, but in the Thrawn trilogy novels, he's not really a bad guy. He's just picked a side. And I think that we could see that version of Thrawn in the Ahsoka series and in Dave Filoni's culmination film, a more layered and interesting character that isn't so black and white.
Yeah, 'cause he's blue.
You done?
Yeah, I'm good.
Alright, so we could see Thrawn make decent points about the failures of the New Republic. We could see him say how he aspires for something better than the Empire. Characters like Bo-Katan and Din will see through these lies, but others may fall for his cunning proposal. Thrawn could offer the Mandalorians a place of power in this new regime, placing the planet of Mandalore and their people at the top, promising to help restore Mandalore to its fullest potential, a place to be both revered and feared throughout the galaxy.
Wow, maybe Thrawn has a point.
Doug!
Sorry, he's just very convincing.
He really is, and this could result in Bo-Katan's leadership being challenged. Now, I'm not saying the Mandalorians would necessarily join the First Order in their quest to reclaim the galaxy, but I could easily see them deciding to not stand in the First Order's way. Thrawn could vow to not touch Mandalore, and the Mandalorians could vow to not help the New Republic. Mandalore could decide to remain neutral.
Having won neutrality for the Mandalorian system.
Now, I think we're kind of getting off track here, but I just wanted to lay the groundwork for what I think could happen in this 23-year gap, so that we can better understand where Grogu might find himself come this new trilogy. When this trilogy takes place, characters like Din, Bo-Katan, and pretty much all the Mandalorians will either be dead or like in their 80s, meaning that we could see Grogu eventually wind up as the leader of Mandalore in the sequel series. And side note, I think the title The Mandalorian is probably not in reference to Din Djarin, but instead to Grogu. He is the Mandalorian. Now, 50 years after the Battle of Yavin, Grogu will have had decades of adventure, cementing himself as perhaps one of the greatest Mandalorians to ever live. There could be rumors about how this particular Mandalorian also holds a unique power, the ability to harness the Force. While Rey is out on her quest to track down Force sensitives, she could find herself journeying to Mandalore. There, she would find not only the Force-wielding warrior Din Grogu, but perhaps the other Force-sensitive foundlings and apprentices that Grogu has brought to Mandalore to train. During that 23-year gap between the latest season and the sequel trilogy, it is possible that Grogu found other Force-sensitive children on he and Din's travels. Grogu may have taken it on himself to take these children to his old master, Luke Skywalker. But when he arrives at the planet Ossus, he finds that Luke's temple has been burned to the ground and Luke is nowhere to be found. It is then that he embarks on a journey to find his old master and deliver these Force-sensitive younglings to him so that they can be trained in the ways of the Force. Once he finds Luke on Ahch-To, the planet where Luke exiled himself to, Grogu is shocked to find a shell of the man his old master once was. The optimistic Jedi Master he once knew is now a defeated hermit, skulking in solitude and cut off from the Force. When Grogu approaches Luke and reveals he's brought him new students, Luke is dismissive and tells him to leave. Grogu presses Luke to tell him what happened to his temple, and Luke will then reluctantly recount the events of that tragic night when Ben Solo, or Kylo Ren, slaughtered his students and destroyed the temple. And it is here that we will hear Luke tell Grogu that he was right to reject him as his master all those years ago.
I was wrong.
Now, the Force doesn't belong to only the Jedi and the Sith, and with Luke declaring the Jedi extinct, this is an opportunity for Mandalore to become the home of Force-sensitive beings who don't dedicate their lives to the Jedi or Sith codes, but instead to the ways of the Mandalore. After all, it was the Mandalorian Tar Vizsla who was the first Mandalorian Jedi, and he later went on to become the ruler of Mandalore. And remember, members of the Vizsla clan are still present on this new Mandalore, like Paz Vizsla's son, Ragnar Vizsla. Ragnar would be an adult by this point, and he and Grogu will likely have gone on many adventures together and fought side by side in many battles. So I could see Ragnar supporting Grogu's choice to bring Force users into the fold on Mandalore and start actively seeking out others to join their ranks.
I don't want to join your super secret boy band.
Now, as the years go by, the Mandalorians will have many Force users within their clans, and Grogu will eventually become the clan's elder while simultaneously being what we consider a young adult.
Time works real different around these parts. On any other world, I'd be like millions of years old.
Grogu will then take his seat as the ruler of Mandalore, and Mandalore will will be the place for Force sensitives to learn the ways of the Force. So when Rey Skywalker embarks on her journey to rebuild the Jedi Order, Force Ghost Luke could tell her about his first student, Grogu, and point her to Mandalore.
But person, why wouldn't Grogu as ruler of Mandalore help to fight the First Order?
Well, like I said, Mandalore could essentially be Switzerland. They're neutral and they don't get involved.
But Grogu was hunted by the Empire for like half a century. Surely he would have gone and helped.
You're right, and who's to say he didn't? I mean, there were a lot of ships that showed up to help in the Rise of Skywalker, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few of them were Mandalorians. So, like I said earlier, I think we could see Grogu and Rey be a little adversarial at first.
I don't like you. I'll get over it.
When Rey arrives and speaks about her desire to rebuild the Jedi Order, Grogu could be very dismissive. And why wouldn't he be? The last time he will have spoken to a Jedi was Luke, when he declared that the Jedi were no more. Grogu then formed a training temple of his own teaching the ways of the Force outside of the Jedi Code, and instead parallel to the ways of the Mandalore.
This is the way.
Another Force user in Grogu's lifetime was Ahsoka, and she was no Jedi. She left the Order during the Clone Wars and never identified herself as a Jedi again, despite her continuing to use the Force and wield lightsabers. Grogu could be very hesitant of resurrecting the Jedi Order, and he could cite the Order's many failures over the centuries. But it is here that we could see Rey admit to the many faults of the Jedi Order and even of their master, Luke Skywalker. But she could then reveal to Grogu that Luke came back around.
And I will not be the last Jedi.
Hell, we could even see Mark Hamill return as a Force Ghost Luke and apologize to Grogu for turning him and his students away. And he could tell Grogu that he's proud of him for finding and training younglings in the light side of the Force. Rey could then explain that it's not her intention to undo anything Grogu has built, but instead to build upon it. She says that they could build a new temple right here on Mandalore, a temple where at first young students are taught the basics of the light side of the Force. All of the overlapping teachings of the Mandalorian Force users and Jedi Force users could be combined, and when the younglings are old enough to decide, they can choose to go the path of the Force-using Mandalorian or the path of a Jedi Knight. But either way, they will live in harmony and use their strengths to better protect the galaxy from dark forces. And Grogu, like Tar Vizsla before him, could be the one to bring the two most powerful warriors in the galaxy together. And I'd feel bad for any villain that tries to take on the combined forces of the Mandalorians and the Jedi.
Well, hey, wait, speaking of villains, are they gonna fight? Like, there's gotta be a big fight in a Star Wars movie. Pew-pew.
Well, that's a great question, buddy, so let's run down a list of some villain characters that we think could be the antagonists of this new Star Wars trilogy. First up, we've got Carnor Jax. Now, Carnor is from the Legends materials, meaning that he's not canon to the mainline Star Wars universe, well, at least not yet. He was a stormtrooper who worked his way up the ranks of the Empire and eventually became one of the Emperor's royal guards. Following the death of Emperor Palpatine, he began openly displaying his Force abilities and connection with the dark side. I could see them introducing this character into canon and him being one of Palpatine's faithful from Exegol, perhaps one of his guards that survives and intends to rebuild the Sith.
Boring, been there, done that.
Now, I agree. Don't get me wrong, I love watching lightsabers clash to John Williams music as much as the next guy, but it's been done. And with the Mandalorians playing what I think will be a massive role in this new trilogy of Star Wars films, I think it'd be fun to have a non-Sith villain. And that brings me to Jodo Kast. He is another Legends character. He wore Mandalorian armor, but he wasn't actually a Mandalorian. In Legends, he was a bounty hunter who had some run-ins with Boba Fett, who eventually killed him for impersonating him. Anyways, I could see this character be adapted into canon as a resident of Mandalore, and he could serve as a thorn in Grogu's side, a character constantly pushing and challenging Grogu's judgment as leader of Mandalore.
No.
And when Grogu decides to work with the Jedi, Rey Skywalker, and create a hybrid Mandalorian Jedi temple on Mandalore, we could see Kast call the Jedi dangerous and cite the great wars that were fought between the Mandalorians and the Jedi for generations. Kast could then form a coalition of Mandalorians who don't agree with Grogu's way of leadership, and they say that his loyalties are split between the Mandalorians and the ways of the Jedi. This could begin yet another Mandalorian civil war, but this time with Jedi.
It would be so awesome. It would be so cool.
I mean, it is called Star Wars, so it would make sense to see a new war taking place in the new trilogy. And that brings me to our final theory, the Yuuzhan Vong.
Vince Vaughn?
No, not Vince Vaughn, the Yuuzhan Vong. They're an alien civilization from outside the Star Wars galaxy. Like, you know how all the Star Wars movies say in a galaxy far, far away? Well, these creatures aren't even from that galaxy. In Legends, they're a race of religious zealots who despise technology and mechanical engineering. In Legends, in about 25 ABY, they invaded the galaxy and nearly destroyed the New Republic. They killed almost 300 trillion people.
I just have to kill a lot of people!
And there's a chilling line delivered by War Master Saw Vong La to Leia saying,
We do not live side by side with impurity. Your civilization is built on abominations. Your galaxy is polluted. We have come to cleanse it so that others besides our warrior caste may occupy it and live cleanly here. It is our destiny.
Oof, that is intense.
Right? And I think they'd be such a perfect villain for this new trilogy. They could be teased by Thrawn and Ezra in the Mandalorian movie with some eerie mentions of unknown creatures that exist beyond the outer rim of the unknown regions. And then, when they finally invade, they could be an antagonist that brings the Jedi and the Mandalorians to save the galaxy that we all know and love. Or, if they don't want to take the Yuuzhan Vong directly from the novels, they could easily use the Grisk. Now, we just covered this in our What's Next video, but the Grisk are basically a different set of antagonists who live in the unknown regions, and they scare Thrawn to death. The Grisk are the entire reason why Thrawn joined the Empire, to see if they would be a worthy ally against the Grisk threat. So, I want to hear from all of you. Do you think Grogu is going to be in this upcoming Rey trilogy? And do you agree with me that it will likely be episodes 10, 11, and 12 of the Star Wars saga? Will Grogu become the ruler of Mandalore and have his own Force user training temple? And who do you think this trilogy's antagonist will be? Another Sith, a Mandalorian Jedi war, or an invasion from another galaxy? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.